With people who have had a near-death experience, often they talk about lucid thought. They talk about either when they're in the presence of this being as understanding all things and having a sense of clarity about all things, which comes from that light. And Swedenborg talks about the same thing, which is really interesting. But let's start off with those who have had the near-death experience. Again, this idea, in the presence of this light, the light of heaven, they're brought into an understanding of so much. And it's interesting because when they come back into the world, like after their near-death experience, they'll say things like, I understood everything about the life and about the world, but when I came back here, it's gone. I don't understand it anymore. So let's just read a couple of things that people have said. So Moody says, over and over I have been told that once they became accustomed to their new situation, people undergoing this experience began to think more lucidly and rapidly than in their physical existence. And then someone who's describing a near-death experience says, your mind is so clear. It's so nice. My mind just took everything down and worked everything out for me the first time without having to go through it any more than once. After a while, everything I was experiencing got to where it meant something to me in some way. Now listen to what Swedenborg says about this. I have often been allowed to perceive that the light that illumines the mind is a true light, quite different from the light that we call natural light. I have been gradually elevated into that light inwardly, and as I was raised up, my discernment was enlightened to the extent that I could grasp what I had been unable to grasp before. Ultimately, things that could in no way be comprehended by thought from natural light. At times, I have resented the fact that they were incomprehensible in natural light when they were so clearly and plainly perceived in heavenly light. I like that. He's saying, I got, especially think about it as a scientist, as somebody who's trying to tell us all about this world. He's finally got it. But when he comes back down into that earthly thought, and he's going to write this stuff down or whatever, it's like, I just can't get it all together. I can't remember all of it because it's too big for me. And he says in this translation anyway that he resented it. There's other translations of that Latin word that are, I was exasperated. Well, one is I was irritated and or I was indignant. Come on, please. Resented sounds like he's mad at somebody in particular. Well, anyway, it makes sense, this idea that being brought into the light of heaven, actually illuminates our minds. Think about it. We say someone has seen the light. All of a sudden, I get it, right? I see the light. Or we talk about somebody who's been working hard on their spiritual growth, that they are enlightened. And again, for people who watch cartoons at all, or some of those old cartoons, somebody will be doing something and suddenly they'll understand, and we'll see a light bulb go boop and show up on right above their heads. We just have this understanding that light does or can in some way illuminate us, spiritual light, that is. So Jesus said, I am the light of the world. And the Gospel of John opens talking about the light shined in the darkness. And at that time, the world was so in false ideas that the darkness did not comprehend it. But he said he was that light that came into the world. Now, clearly, that's talking about a spiritual light and the teachings he gave us and how he led us and opened up our minds to a new way. That's leading us to lucid thought. Now, another thing that comes along with this, and we're going to talk more about this later, but is the idea that even when we're in this presence of the light, that there is no judgment. There's no judgment. In the near-death experience, we'll see there's no judgment. The being of light isn't judging you at all. And Swedenborg also says about the spiritual son or God, God doesn't judge us. He loves us. So there's one quote I want to read right here about this. The Lord is goodness itself, love itself, and mercy itself. Good itself cannot do harm to anyone. Love itself and mercy itself cannot spurn anyone, because this is contrary to mercy and love, and is therefore contrary to the divine nature itself. And Swedenborg just gives us a little hint. There's a lot more of this coming later on, but he wants us to know right away, in this light, it's not like that light is just coming right at us and blinding us and judging us. No, it is a light of understanding. It's a light of understanding filled with the warmth of love. Now, another thing I find fascinating is that in one place, Swedenborg talks about that this light, it's a light, but it varies. It varies according to people's religious understanding of God. Same thing is said, and we hit on it a little earlier, from people who have had the near-death experience. Now, let me tell you what I'm talking about here. In Life After Life, Moody says, the identification of the being of light varies from individual to individual and seems to be largely a function of the religious background training and beliefs of the person involved. So I said earlier, Christians would often identify the light as Christ. Jews, Moody points out, would often identify the light as being an angel. And he says people who really don't have any belief in God or have no religion will talk about it as being a being of light, of pure love and understanding. So it's all according to some degree or another as to how they view God in the beginning, before they have this experience. So Swedenborg says something similar, but perhaps takes it a little further. Since everyone accepts the heaven that is outside according to the quality of the heaven that is within, when the Lord renders himself present in any particular community, his appearance depends on the nature of the good activity that community is engaged in. It is therefore not exactly the same in one community as in another. It is not that this difference is in the Lord, it is in the individuals who are seeing him from their own goodness and therefore in keeping with it. They are affected by the sight of him according to the quality of their own love. It's according to their religious beliefs. It's according to who they are, is how to some degree, how they see who the Lord is. So we're talking about illumination, that light, the heat that comes forth is being filled with love. That light is not just God's understanding, but illuminates us, gives us a clarity in this world. And that light that comes to us is a non-judgmental light. It's opening up our understanding. It's showing us new things. And we're going to keep on going with this into the next part.